Home Sweet Home Alone is technically the sixth installment of the Home Alone franchise, a franchise that really has nothing much to offer other than a fantastic, original, classic Christmas movie. A sequel that has a soft spot in my heart is basically just the first movie again, though, in a lot of ways, except it's in New York and bigger. And then everything else sucks, so Home Sweet Home Alone has a lot of competition for worst Home Alone sequel. And this movie is about when Disney bought 20th Century Fox and they went down into the film archives of what they could recycle, what they could remake and do again, but this time with a new Disney lens over it, and they found Home Alone, realized the holidays were coming up, and were like, bada bing, bada boom, we got Disney Plus 2, let's put it on there. We're doing Home Alone, baby. It's not a remake, even though it doesn't have Macaulay Culkin, but it's set in the same universe. So even though we're doing the same movie again, technically, it references the other ones. So it's a sequel, actually. Instead of being a crappy remake, it's just a crappy sequel. Got 'em. I was not excited for this movie whatsoever. When they announced it, I think I wanted to hold on to some sliver of hope because Archie Yates from Jojo Rabbit seems like a sweet kid. He's cast in the lead. You know, I want to see that kid succeed. And then Ellie Kemper and Rob Delaney, two comedic actors who I really enjoy seeing pop up. I wanted to root for them, you know. I didn't want to hate this movie just because it's another Home Alone movie. I wanted to give it a chance because these people are people that I genuinely like. But then they attached a couple people to the creative process of this. Two of them are SNL people, one of them being Mikey Day, the one who's usually in front of the camera on SNL. So that was a little weird that SNL people were coming in to write a family-themed Christmas remake, or sorry, soft reboot, whatever, of Home Alone. But then the director was announced, and it was the guy who did Dirty Grandpa, if you remember that from a couple years ago. Bad movie, really awful movie, in fact, where Robert De Niro embarrasses himself, and so does Zac Efron. Wowza. So this guy coming in to do Home Sweet Home Alone, I don't understand it. I don't know why he was picked other than comedy. And that seems like it's it. So I did not go into this movie with the highest of expectations, especially after that trailer where I was like, yeah, it's just gonna be Home Alone again, just Buzz as a cop. And Macaulay Culkin's probably not going to show up. So, like, why are we doing this other than Disney wants to make more money off of the brand from the film library that they've just bought from 20th Century Fox? But when I was watching this movie, something kind of occurred to me. It actually has potential. Like, it actually had a somewhat kind of clever idea about it at first, where you could actually, this time, focus more on the thieves and actually not humanize them. Instead of just doing like cartoony bad guys like Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern were, which that's not a knock against them at all. They're obviously fantastic and classic villains. But, you know, if you're trying to redo something, focusing on a different angle of the plot definitely could help. And focusing on these thieves who are just family people. They're having some financial troubles. They want to be supportive of their kids during the Christmas holiday season, and then, oh my gosh, new relatives come in, and it's just all so stressful, and they're much wealthier than them. So you constantly get the vibe that they think that they're slumming it just because they're in a okay house. And when they realize that they have something in their possession that is worth a lot of money, they try to find it, realize it's gone, and they think back to an open house they had. A kid was definitely looking at it like, hey, what's this all about? Maybe he stole it. Let's break into this kid's house and find the thing and just get out, you know? It's actually an interesting idea to approach this soft reboot with. You know, so if I had to give this movie any props, is that they had an idea. It's right there. And even Ellie Kemper and Rob Delaney, I would say, give the best performances in this. Not that that's a incredibly difficult thing to do, to stand out amongst the cast in this. But, you know, watching them, I was like, okay, the way they've set this up and just the way they're just kind of, you know, natural together and, you know, they're doing their comedy thing, they're not bad in this at all. You know, the few times that I even, like, gave a chuckle to this movie or attempted to laugh mostly came from them. Occasionally it's the slapstick. Like, every once in a while there's like a clever use of the slapstick stuff that you've come to expect from the Home Alone movies, especially during the big trap scenes. But let's just get into everything I really disliked about this movie, because other than initial setup and occasional spurts of, hey, that's not a bad idea, I thought this movie was pretty terrible, and it just feels so cynical and bad in every single way. It's like looking at the first Home Alone movie and going, all right, we know what we have to do, and then doing everything wrong. It seems like that's what they did. What the first Home Alone movie did really well is that they gave you this kid, Macaulay Culkin, who if they did it the wrong way, if they wrote it the wrong way, if they directed Macaulay the wrong way, this kid could be really unlikable. You wouldn't be able to relate to this character. Luckily, though, they do a good job of spending time with his family, kind of seeing the different members of them and how they all kind of irritate or antagonize Kevin in different ways, and just seeing that slowly build up until Kevin explodes, and it sets off the rest of the movie. And in this, what they do is they show like a minute's worth of just going around the house. Look at everyone running around and acting a fool. No one really has a personality. You recognize like Andy Daly and the other guy, what's his name? Pete Holmes, I think is his name. You recognize them because you're like, hey, I know them from something else, but then they're gone. It's not like you're spending time with them like his other, like his parents or his uncle in the last movie. It's just, hey, there they are. All right, let's keep it moving. They're just everyone's loud and everyone's annoying, and obviously you're going to relate to our new kid. I'm just going to call Archie Yates' character Kevin, because even though he has a different name, I can't remember what it is, and since this is just a reboot of Home Alone anyways, let's just call him Kevin. So they think like, oh, just having everyone scream and run around, that'll be able to make you relate to new Kevin like you did old Kevin, and understand his kind of like, oh, woe is me attitude. But not really. It's very clumsily put together. You don't have identifiable faces in the family. You don't care for any of the characters, even if they are annoying. Like, even though they're annoying, you do kind of have some kind of enjoyment watching Buzz just be a fucking loser in the last movie, or even like his uncle, or the weird kid who's like addicted to soda, like you enjoy seeing those kids, those other family members pop up, because like, hey, they have these weird little quirks that are kind of funny, but in the right context will cause our main character to be annoyed. This movie doesn't have that. And it doesn't even have like the big like explosion of Kevin where he's like, well, I wish I never had a family. I don't want to see any of you ever again. In this one, he tries to, like, our new Kevin, he's like, oh man, everything's so annoying, better go talk to my British mum. And he just walks up to his mom, who is clearly on the phone having a heated discussion with whoever's at the airport or something like that, and clearly does not need to even be in an environment where everyone's running around. Why she's in the kitchen doing this call, I don't know. But he just walks up going like, Mom, just like, doing that shit. And when she's like, dude, what are you doing? I'm trying to talk to someone on the phone, get out of here. He's like, oh man, I can't believe no one has time for me. And it's like, hey, what, stop bothering your mom who's on the phone, dude. Like, I don't feel bad for this character, but the movie is trying to tell you this is the point where you're supposed to relate and feel bad. And it's like, no, fuck this kid. This kid sucks, And he's like, oh, woe is me. Let me go into the garage and watch Looney Tunes in the car. And basically that's how they forget him, is that he's just sleeping in the car in the garage. And when they all wake up, it's not even the same rushed feeling of like, we got to get to the airport we slept in, and it kind of creates this thing like, okay, it's reasonable that they would forget Kevin. They lost the passport earlier in the beginning of the movie, so, everything makes sense. In this one, it's like, they actually have it pretty, as far as what they show, they have it pretty under wraps as far as getting to the airport. It's not like, they show them rushing, but it's actually part of the plan anyway, so it's not. So how they left new Kevin this time doesn't really make sense. And it's just very dull. And then new Kevin has the house to himself, and it's like, oh yeah, fucking amazing. There's no slow build-up to Kevin walking around being like, where is everyone? What's going on? And then he has the realization, aha, this must have been what happened. New Kevin just walks into the garage and everything's silent. He's like, oh, everyone must have left me and forgot me. Awesome, I have the house to myself. And it's just so boring. Like, you don't have the moments in the original movie where Kevin, he's having fun, he's doing all these things, but he kind of slowly starts to do more adult things. He starts to take care of himself, actually, instead of just doing whatever he wants. And he actually kind of starts to appreciate his family a lot more, because he starts to miss them, even though they're irritating and vexing a lot of the time. This one doesn't have those moments. It doesn't have those character beats. It's just, all right, he's having fun. Oh boy, it's time for burglar stuff. And it's so frustrating that they completely forgot or just didn't know how to capture exactly what makes that first movie so charming in the first place. It's the whole heart of the movie, how Kevin actually just appreciates his family, understands the importance of the season and being together. It's gone in this, and we have new Kevin who sucks. He doesn't even really have a reason for being an expert, like, engineer for, like, as far as the traps go, like Kevin was in the original, you know? This one is just like, all right, well, I guess it's time to build traps. Let's do it, you know? And it's just, it just no build up. There's no, like, slow reveal into, like, okay, well, Kevin's going to start off doing this, and he'll, you know, do this, and then he'll build to the big trap stuff. It's just like, all right, now he's going to do traps because it's Home Alone. We got to do traps. And in a movie where the movie actually is taking more time to humanize the thief characters, and new Kevin is left by the wayside to be this void of charisma, this black hole of nothingness, you actually, it makes the trap stuff less enjoyable. I'm all for, like, flipping it on his head if it's like, hey, you're actually gonna root for the thieves this time and feel bad for them when this psycho kid is, like, trying to kill them just because they want their doll back or whatever. So I'm all for that idea. In fact, it sounds great if it wasn't made by Disney to actually, like, make it, like, maybe R-rated, kind of a dark comedy kind of thing. You know, maybe if this was still at 20th Century Fox, maybe they'd give that a go, you know? Why not? But they don't do the work to actually earn that. It's not what this movie's trying to be. So instead, you're just watching our thief characters who, you know, are just having a rough time, and they're making the stupidest decisions. I want to like these characters, but the way this movie's written, they make the dumbest mistakes. Like, it's not even like, oh, I can see how that happened. It's like, how the fuck are you thinking that this is even a good idea right now? Like, at one point, just to kind of show this, Rob Delaney, he overhears what the passcode is to the house to set up the alarm, 1112, and he's like, oh, that's a bad passcode, you know, as a joke. And then when he's like, all right, I got the passcode, he enters in 2221, and it's like, how do you, it's not close enough where you as an audience member can be like, oh, yeah, I can understand how you'd make the switch. It's something so simple. 1112, 3 ones and a 2, and instead he's like, all right, 2221, uh-oh. The alarm goes off when they first go into the house. And then, oh my God, at one point, okay, there's another scene, right, where they're at church or whatever doing, you know, Christmas Eve stuff. New Kevin is there, and Ellie Kemper or Rob Delaney, one of the two, spots him talking to an elderly woman, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's the kid, and he's with his grandma. Okay, so he's with his grandma for the holidays or whatever. And instead of going, let's get up and talk to him, like, hey, we're missing a doll, we noticed you looking at it the other day, do you have it? They're like, let's go break into his house now. Let's miss whatever our daughter is doing at this recital thing, and let's go break into this kid's house because he's here. Instead of just talking to him directly, let's go attempt to break into his house, and then they fuck that up. You know, so it's like, they make the dumbest mistakes possible, and you want to root for these characters. At least I did. I wanted to root for these characters, but instead they just, like, wrote this movie so stupid. I don't think Home Alone can really exist at least the same exact way as the original in the modern day, because I'm struggling to remember what the excuses were that, you know, Kevin or his mom couldn't reach him. But then I have this specific memory in my head of, like, the third act where, you know, Kevin all of a sudden is just like, I called my mom and she's gonna come to this house to pick me up, so yay, we did it. And it's like, okay, yeah, so there's always a way to, like, get in contact or whatever, or to contact somebody else maybe to come look at the house, you know, another family member, anyone in the neighborhood who could help out, anybody, literally anybody. But they have a real great excuse for that at one point where they're like, hey, can you check out this alarm that buzzed or whatever at this house? And Buzz, the brother from the last movie, he's like, oh no, I'm not doing that. You see, every year my brother Kevin tries to, and he goes on this, like, explanation of, like, man, Kevin prank calls these houses and I go check them out, nothing's wrong, you know, and they're all houses that are, like, that have, like, Macaulay Culkin, that's not it, sorry, McAllister, security signs on them, because Kevin went on to be, like, a security expert, which is actually, that's actually kind of clever, you know, if we actually saw that happen. But yeah, so they create this whole scenario. The only reason I think that it's tied into the original Home Alone at all is just so they could have that excuse of, like, well, if Buzz is the cop and he thinks it's just a prank from Kevin McAllister from the last movies, then there you go, plot hole tied up, nice and good. And it's like, it's just more so frustrating. Why is Buzz in this movie? It's literally just so they can reference the last movie. Like, he really doesn't have a good role in this. You know, like, they as soon as he steps out of the car, the camera does some good work zooming in on that name tag. Like, look, it says McAllister. Remember the last one? So you have, like, the flimsiest of excuses to have this movie happen. And then you have characters that you want to like making dumb decisions, and then characters you don't like who are supposed to be the heroes of the movie, essentially, the ones you're supposed to relate to the most, with a lot a lot of unfunny gags and bad acting. It's actually been a while, I think, since I've seen a movie where both the direction on the actors and the script itself were constantly working against each other and just making this bad mess of like, hey, the acting is bad, but also the script is bad. Nothing is doing anyone any favors, you know? Like, like I said, there's a couple times where I chuckled. Sometimes it's just a line delivery or like just some trap where I was like, whatever, that's kind of nice or whatever. It seems kind of clever, even though it doesn't make sense for this kid to even think of this, but whatever. But there's a lot of bad jokes in this, and one of the worst is obviously the one where they realize, hey, we're doing a Home Alone, not a remake, but it's a soft reboot where it's a sequel, but we're doing a lot of the same shit. So let's have a character point it out. So they're watching the movie from the original, but it's a remake where instead of like a gangster noir film, it's a sci-fi. But it has the same dialogue, where a guy in a robot suit is saying the same thing, where it's like, I'm gonna give you to the count of 10 to get your yellow keister out of here, or whatever. Like, in the context of the movie, it doesn't make sense, because like, who in the real world would look at a gangster noir and be like, I know what we gotta do to remake this, sci-fi, but keep the dialogue the same as well. It's like, that just wouldn't happen, you know? So the joke is already reaching to such extremes, but then the member of the family is just like, man, I wish they wouldn't touch the classics. You can never be as good as the originals. And then they look right at the camera and then start flipping off everyone because they think they're so much smarter than everyone. Like, it's not clever or funny to just do these like obvious, lame ass jokes where it's like, because we're a movie that's technically kind of a remake, let's point out how remakes are bad. That'll give us some meta quality to it, right? No, this is so stupid. But let's talk about the traps real quick, because that's the part where like a lot of kids probably enjoy the most about these Home Alone movies, is just watching the traps happen. And then, you know, as an adult, you appreciate the whole movie. But I remember even as a kid, I was like, man, this is a good movie and all, but man, those traps, you know? And the traps in this one, it's like I said, every once in a while, there'll be one where I'm like, all right, whatever, sure. But it's not the same. Like I said, they don't build up to it properly enough. I don't buy that this kid wants to actually do that or has any kind of smarts to pull this off. But it just seems, I don't know. It's really dumb, because he ices his driveway so that when they start to walk up, they do the slip and fall. Oh my gosh. But he also ices the road where it's like, okay, so anyone, it doesn't even have to be these two, anyone who's driving here and isn't slow enough will start to crash and swerve. It's like, that's, okay, it's a bit much, because the theme of like the Home Alone traps is you gotta protect the property. You know, at the property line, that's where the traps will start and that's where they will end also. But he's like, let me just get the fucking road too, you know? And then there's these Nerf guns that he shoots at them at one point where they actually have like needles in the darts so it'll stick. And instead of being like, oh man, that was so funny, I was just sitting there going like, ooh. Like, honestly, I can't imagine how a kid would feel like watching that, because like, sure, there's a lot of painful things that happen, but I feel like in the Chris Columbus movies, there's a craft to his direction that makes it all kind of work in a way that's also like kids can watch it and be like, this is amazing, you know? But in this, it's done in that just whatever, no craft, no style kind of direction where it's just, there's this gloss on the screen, you know, you can tell it's a corporate studio movie, and just nothing felt right, you know? It felt really mean-spirited and just unentertaining in every single way. Like, there's a point where just, you know, new Kevin is running from the thief, and Rob Delaney is after him, and he's like, hey, get back here, kid, I just want to talk. And it sets off a trap where icicles from the roof start to come down one by one. Somehow new Kevin orchestrated that. I'm not sure how. But the thing about that is, like, if those fall down, like, they're sharp and pointy. If they really do, like, fall down from such a height and hit someone in the head, they're dead. So this whole time, I'm watching this scene where it's supposed to be, like I said, it's not the dark comedy that I thought could have worked. It's the family-friendly, our kid is a superhero and kids should look up to him and relate to him, but also care about our thief characters. And you just see Rob Delaney just like running for his life from these icicles that are like inches away from actually impacting him. And it's not as entertaining as I think they thought it was. But they are also incredibly stupid as well, where like, you know, Rob Delaney, he gets knocked out and he wakes up, there's a VR headset on. But instead of going like, let me take this fucking thing off, because obviously there's a fucking headset on my head, he's like, oh my god, he dragged me out into the middle of the desert, oh my god, where am I? Oh my god. And it's like, are you this fucking stupid. Or, no. In real life, no one would be that stupid. It's just Mikey Day and the other SNL writer, or the studio exec that thought this would be funny, was like, fuck it. We don't need logic. Just have him be goofy. You know, he's gonna have a big old bump on his head from that fucking pool ball that hit him in the face earlier. And it's gonna look fucking gross, but the kids will laugh? I don't know. There's even like some bad CGI used where like he's just, you know, the very simple thing of like, I'm, you know, set up a little cloth on the stairwell and I'm pulling stuff back and launching it at the stairs. There's like a bag of sugar that's CG. Like you can kind of tell because it's not, it doesn't look real. It moves in a way where it's like, you know, an editor at a computer is trying to match it, but it's not quite right, because why the fuck would you CGI something as simple as that, you know? But then there's one point where new Kevin, like, expertly predicts where someone is going to go in the traps. Like, okay, to explain it, at one point, you know, they slip on the ice and they're like, all right, let's split up. Rob Delaney takes the stairs, Ellie Kemper goes in the back. Ellie Kemper gets assaulted by soda bottles being thrown. There's a lot of, like, just new Kevin just being actively involved in the traps where he's like, it's not like I've set this stuff up and they're gonna trigger it themselves. It's a lot of like, I'm throwing the shit, I'm setting off the icicles, I'm shooting the tennis or pool ball stuff, I'm doing this and then whatever. But yeah, she gets assaulted by the soda bottles. She ends up like in this spot like near the basement door or whatever. She gets glued. I think glued? Yeah, glued. And then something lit up her feet because there's like gasoline. So she gets glued in a spot and there's gasoline there. She gets lit up on the feet. It's like a mixture of like that part where Joe Pesci burns his hand, but then also the part where Marv steps into the window and because he's already barefoot, he smashes into the ornaments. It's like, oh shit, it's like a combo of those two. And then she walks around back to the front like, okay, this is a disaster. And she sees Rob Delaney passed out. There's, you know, room over here. I'm going to go this way. She walks in and there's Legos ready for her. And instead of just like seeing that and going like, ooh, never mind, let me back up out of here. Well, okay, there's like, oh my God, this is so dumb. There's like a spoon, right? So when she opens it, a spoon hits her toe. So she over-exaggerates her like, oh shit, that hurt. And she starts jumping into the room on top of the Legos. And she's like, oh, well shit, I'm already here now. Better keep hopping around and acting a fool. But it's like new Kevin expertly predicted that the person who would get into the, you know, fire feet trap would come back around and definitely be the first person to come into this trap, and it's going to work expertly, and like it's going to work where she will definitely be hopping, you know, onto them as well. So it's like there's leaps of logic even. Like, you know, the way the traps are set up in the other movies, it's like, okay, there's a plan here. You know, it's really for anybody. It's not like he expertly predicted where everyone was going to go. It's just like, hey, if they get this far, they're going to run into this, they're going to run into this, whatever. But in this, it just seems like, well, yep, I had this whole thing figured out. Got him. So it's a nightmare. And it ends with a fucking schmaltzy, fake-ass Christmas spirit message where they learn that the entire movie could have been avoided if they asked someone in their own house instead of just assuming the worst from a random kid who is unlikable as shit in the beginning of the movie. So that's fun. It's great to know that the entire movie you watched was entirely pointless, but hey, it was funny, right? I'm gonna give Home Sweet Home Alone a D+. Like I said, there are some things that I did like about it. I do like that somebody, I don't know who it was, but somebody had an idea as far as making a different kind of Home Alone movie. I do want to give props to Rob Delaney and Ellie Kemper just because they're whatever. I enjoy them. That might be personal bias, but I enjoyed them nonetheless. Not completely, just I enjoyed the fact that they were playing the characters at least well enough, even if a lot of the jokes that were written for them or that they ad-libbed didn't really work. I don't even know, man. This movie is so garbage, and I hated every single second of it. Even the subplot where the mom is trying to get back from their trip and you know, go through the airport and get back home. It's more entertaining in the first movie, and you actually at least get the reaction. You get the Kevin scream on the plane. And in this, it's just like, oh, they're in the hotel and they've already realized what's happened and the scene has moved on. And she's just, we'll cut back to the mom every once in a while, but it's not the same as the first movie. You don't have John Candy helping her out. I would not recommend you show your families this movie because it's just awful. I think that's what it is. I'm not really concerned if they will be able to handle some of the trap stuff that's surprisingly more kind of mean-spirited and ugly than the other ones. Somehow they managed to work that out. It's mostly just because it's bad. You know, Encanto is in theaters. If you feel comfortable going there, you can watch that. There's probably some other streaming movies that have holiday classics right now that you can watch instead of Home Sweet Home Alone. It's not the worst Home Alone sequel, because I preferred it over the fourth one because that was like nothing, and I didn't see Holiday Heist. Sorry, Malcolm McDowell. So I guess it's probably better than those two, but I enjoyed 3 more than this, and 3 is also not a very good movie, but I remember at least watching that as a kid and going like, that was pretty okay, you know? So, whatever. And plus, young Scarlett Johansson is in it, and it's like, hey, she went on to become Black Widow. Good for her. This random character from Home Alone 3 became like a fucking movie star. Where's even the main kid in that one? I don't know. Fucking gone. I don't know. But if you've already seen Home Sweet Home Alone, leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.